Scott Wright, the Oklahoman, joins us on 365 Sports. Thank you, Manny, for the time. Appreciate it very much, Scott. So let's start with the Zane Flores got an extra year or got a year back in the quarterback room. And what is that quarterback room, and what are the expectations who will start their opening game?
Boy, that's a fantastic question. I wish I could answer that one. But here's what we know. Obviously, they started with 4 in spring. Garrett Rangel and Milwaukee Smith have both exited via the transfer portal. They're both gone now. So it's really a 2-man competition. They do have a new freshman that they were able to bring in, Banks Bowen, but I don't expect him to really jump into the competition right away. So it looks like Zane Flores, as you mentioned, he got that year back from last year, had an ankle surgery that ended his season. So he'll be a redshirt freshman now, even though it's going to be his 3rd season on campus. And then Hoss Haney from TCU, who transferred after his true freshman year, also going to be a redshirt freshman, has some familiarity, obviously, with Doug Meacham, the new Oklahoma State offensive coordinator. He was down there at TCU with him. Meacham was very highly involved in Hoss's recruiting, so they have a good relationship that'll probably help him out in some aspect during this quarterback competition. But it's going to be a 2-man race, and listen, you don't put anything past Mike Gundy. If there's a chance for him to play both of these guys, he's going to find a way to do it. And at least it makes sense this time. A couple of years ago, he had that 3-man quarterback rotation where it was basically all 3 guys were pretty much the same, and he was rotating them, every 4 or 5 series. Just a really odd deal to start that year. But this one, you can see where, maybe Flores is your better pocket passer type of guy, and Haney is the guy with the speed that can do some more things running the football. Maybe they find a way to use them both that way. I don't know. We'll find out.
Scott, is there a different vibe around the program now, given the near explosion of the tension in the offseason about renegotiating the contract and what money goes where, and Mike Gundy was going to quit in 24 hours or be fired in 24 hours or whatever all that was? Does it feel different than walking in and Mike Gundy knowing that everything's going to be okay because he was locked in for life there?
Yeah, it totally changed the vibe around the program, I think, and it was maybe a good distraction from the way the season ended, because rather than all the attention being on the players and obviously the new coaching staff, he remade the entire staff, and that just gave the whole program a really fresh feel. It's rare. I haven't actually found an instance where a head coach has been kept but had to hire entirely new offensive and defensive staffs. Both coordinators and then all the way down. The only guys that stuck around were some analysts and some special teams coaches. So it was a really weird offseason, but it absolutely did. Between the new coaches and Gundy getting all of his contract stuff worked out, and then a really heavy influx, 40 guys. By the time we get to August, it'll be 40 guys, if not more, new guys in through the portal. So that changes the vibe around your program really quickly when you bring in that many new faces that are that last year's 3-9 doesn't mean anything to them. Not losing or not winning a Big 12 game. They don't know what that felt like. So it's really helped to regenerate a good attitude around Stillwater.
Does Gundy come across as different at all, or is he just the same old guy? I just wondered, maybe a little bit humbled, maybe the power dynamic's a little bit different, or is he just the same old Mike Gundy?
Spring, he is always very relaxed. We'll see when things get a little bit more tense closer to the season to know that for sure. Spring, he's always very relaxed and chatting with us, and he brought back a spring game. He had gotten rid of spring games a few years ago, and brought them back right at the time when everybody else is trying to get rid of them. So it was you never know what to expect with this guy. He's a blast to cover. It can be a challenge at times, but he's a lot of fun because you just never know what you're going to get out of him. And we'll see what he's like in July at Big 12 Media Days, how his attitude is different there. When it's a lot more media than just the local folks coming up to Stillwater and hanging out with him before a spring practice. So it's hard to project with him. It's very difficult for him to be really noticeably humble. You can catch glimpses of it from time to time, but overall, the majority of the time, he is who he is, and we'll see if that really changes.
So, Scott, you've mentioned expectations and things like that. Last year, everybody was coming back. The expectations were Big 12 championship, and that obviously didn't work out. Now this year, everybody's new, it feels like, right? It's almost the opposite. We have Oklahoma State fans that chime in, and sometimes they're like, hey, Oklahoma State needs to be mentioned for this, or they need to be mentioned for that. But, what is the expectation around there right now? What is the thought about what next year holds or needs to hold and all that goes along with that?
Like I said, the attitude is much better. But attitude's not going to win you any Big 12 games. So we're going to have to see what these guys can actually do on the field. You look at the guys that they brought in from the transfer portal. A lot of these, out of those 40 guys, vast majority of those guys are going to be in the 2 deep. So it's hard to know what they're going to look like on the field. It's really hard to project. I saw some of the early over-unders. I think had Oklahoma State at 5.5 wins for the season. That feels about right as far as what I could project right now. They got a middle linebacker that they really like in Brandon Rawls, but he's coming from Saginaw Valley State. I don't know if he's going to be able to produce at the Big 12 level the way that he was there. So certainly not the numbers, but can he hold his own? It looks like it, but we'll see when he gets on the field against some real competition. You got other guys that were highly recruited, and big time recruits at the other places they've been, but maybe things didn't work out for some reason. A guy like Caleb Hicks, who was a 4-star running back recruit out of Denton, went to OU and never really got on the field much over 2 seasons, but he looked fantastic in spring for the Cowboys. So there's just so many questions about this team that it's really hard to pinpoint what type of program they're going to have, and especially when you don't know what the quarterback situation is going to look like. You don't know. I mean, it's an entirely new offensive line. Last year's line, you didn't really want anybody back from that group the way they played, but still, this is an entirely new group, new coaches. I have no idea what they're going to be able to do on a Saturday in Big 12 season.
Scott, I think you could point to many things last year that were the collapsing point, but the one thing they thought that they were going to have, they had all this experience back along the offensive line, 5th and 6th year guys, super seniors, all across. It was the most disappointing position on the field, I would say, by a long shot. Do you think that they have changed the way, with Doug Meacham coming in at coordinator with new position coaches, that they look at and recruit offensive linemen, especially since the offense will be probably a little bit different going back to the Doug Meacham system?
Yeah, it certainly seems like they have found the type of lineman they want. In some long guys that can take up space. It's hard to really to build an offensive line just out of the transfer portal, but they've got some guys who stuck around, guys who were backups last year, and guys that they really like, young guys that are coming up. So they put that together with the new coaches. They've got a couple of different guys coaching the offensive line, which I'm going to be curious to see how that works with Cooper Bassett and Andrew Mitchell, both guys that are Oklahoma State alums, played for Mike Gundy early in his years. So going to be curious to see what that system looks like. But they like the guys that they're bringing in. They've added a couple of more in the spring portal period here that they'll get in this summer. So I definitely think it's going to have a different feel up there. Things had gotten a little bit stagnant with Charlie Dickey, and had all of those veterans around that had been there for years. But it it felt like new guys weren't really getting the chance to break in, even if it felt like maybe some of the veterans were struggling a little bit and might have benefited from a change. So we'll see what they're able to do up there, but a lot of new faces and a lot of excitement about what the new coaches are bringing in up there.
Got a note in the chat room, Barry Crawford, and you've touched on this a little bit. They had 8 players to the NFL and graduated a large senior class, a quarterback that really hasn't taken a snap in a college game. That's a chunk right there, isn't it? That's the unknown, and maybe that's also refreshing. That
also off 3-9, all that team.
And maybe that's good because they got rid of some of whatever was the problem at 3-9, other than just having a bad year.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you would love to have a more experienced quarterback to be able to rely on. Flores has never been in a game. Hoss Haney, I think played 30 snaps or something, ran the ball a bunch, never threw a pass in the 4 games that he appeared in. Ran it like 15 times, I think, and handed it off a bunch. So you don't have a guy on the roster who's thrown a pass in a college game. You're losing a running back who won the Doak Walker Award 2 years ago, and obviously last year didn't go the way he wanted, but still, Doak Walker Award, NFL draft pick. You got multiple guys off the defense that end up going and being selected in the draft. A couple of guys that were hurt, and you can also link that back to some of their struggles on defense. But as you mentioned, there were so many things that went wrong with that team last year. But yeah, it absolutely helps coming off of such a disappointing season, the worst season in Mike Gundy's tenure, to have so much new, and it's really helped to turn the page so quickly, because a season like last year could have lingered for a lot of these guys, but so many of them that were critical to what was going on have moved on now, and so this is a fresh start. Even for the guys that were on the roster last year, it's so much of a fresh start that it's kind of brought back a positive energy.
Are you surprised that Mike Gundy went back to familiarity with a lot of these coaches that he hired, or instead of going for new blood, which may have made the powers that be like more intrigued, or did he kind of strike out with a new blood when he was going to get D3 DCs?
Well, there's a little bit of that was lingering, and he didn't really want to go super young or super inexperienced. Now, that said, I did not expect him to get somebody older than him, which is what he got in Doug Meacham, who's just barely older than him, but still, Meacham is 60 now. Todd Grantham is in his late 50s on the defensive side. So I didn't expect him to go that route. I thought that he would be able to lure in a guy who had some mid-major success as a coordinator on one side of the ball, the other, and build from there. I didn't see this playing out the way that it did at all. But at the same time, with everything that became public about his contract issues and that 48-hour period there right after signing day in early December, that was just so chaotic and such a really bad look for Oklahoma State in general, something that could have been avoided if the Board of Regents had handled things a little bit differently. That was it was a bunch of bad PR at a time when you're trying to go and convince some up and coming coaches to come be a part of your program, and that certainly did not help at all.
Yeah, Haney had 15 carries, but did not attempt to pass at TCU. That's intriguing.
Well, I'll tell you this. There's a lot of questions, Scott, but it just sounds refreshed, though, up there. And it sounds like there's an excitement even with the unknown. So that's good to look forward to, instead of just a slog of an offseason of like, there's optimism, I feel like, and a fresh blank sheet of paper to work with. Let's see where it goes, right?
Yeah, honestly, this for me as as one of the guys covering this program, it feels a lot like the offseason, the early part of 2023, when they ended up being a team that competed, went and played Texas for the Big 12 title that year, ended up winning 10 games. coming off of 2022, they were, that season they had just fallen off a cliff in the middle of the year. They ended up getting to a bowl, but that was only because they had won 6 games really early in the year before everything collapsed. And I thought that was the lowest point that they were ever going to be at the end of that year. They had all of these starters going in the portal, but they turned things around with new blood. At that time, it was just portal guys. It wasn't a big coaching staff change like this year, but they turned things around really quickly. And the spring of 2023 felt a lot the way that this spring felt here in 25. The only difference was that team was at least bringing in some quarterbacks who had played some. That was Alan Bowman before his really good year in 2023. Even Garrett Rangel had started some games at the end of 22, so there was less uncertainty about the quarterback position, but still it was a very, very familiar feeling vibe to what that year had been like.
Scott had a question in the chat room, and then we'll let you go. Thank you very much for your time. So would you consider, or will he ever truly be, Gundy, on a so-called proverbial hot seat?
I mean, yeah, I think it's possible now. A lot of people felt like he was, a lot of fans felt like he was last year and felt like he needed to go. It was never going to happen. They did not have the money to pay his buyout last year, which was over $25 million at a time when they're preparing for revenue sharing and they got to find another $20 million, just to meet the budget demands. It just wasn't going to happen last year. But the restructuring of the contract has brought the buyout way down. It's like $15 million right now, and will go down over the future years. They took out the rollover that basically had given him a lifetime contract. It was only a 5-year deal, but you're adding a year to it at the end of every year. So it was really a never-ending deal. And so they've gotten rid of that element. Now it's a more traditional contract. It's got a reasonable buyout, at least somewhat reasonable for college coaching money, at least. And so it's the school has a lot more power than they did, back last November when things were falling apart. So it's to the point now that they can at least have some standing at the table if it gets to that point. And Gunning really does have to consider the fact that they might be able to fire him. Now we'll see what he does and how much longer he wants to coach and all of those sorts of things, whether he tries to end it on his own terms or whatever. But the school has more power now than they have in several years if things go south again this season.
Thank you, buddy. Good stuff, Scott. Scott Wright with the Oklahoman with us on Oklahoma State on 365 Sports.